Hey guys, it's Alan Mearns here. What if I told you there's three doors in front of you, right? The first one is covered in precious stones, diamonds, all kinds of jewels, different colors. The second door is just plated with all the most precious metals. It's got gold and silver, platinum and taglios, all kinds of stuff. And the third door is very simple, made of oak and iron. And then I asked you, where do you think the gold is hidden? Now you might think like, well, there's gold on the door, the golden door. No, but if I say, where's the dragon's treasure hidden? Let's put it like that. I'd say 95% of yous would be like, well, it's probably hidden behind this simple oak iron door, right? So we all know this kind of archetypal trope in the back of our minds, over thousands of years. We know that the true value is usually hiding behind the simple things, right? That the true treasures in life are not the flashy, surfacey things, but they're the things that are just right in front of us if we're willing to take hold of them. So what I want to talk to you about today is maybe the most important thing in this regards. And all I'm here to say, and I'm going to show you some tricks to do it, is that you have to learn the bloody notes. You have to. If you want to get better at the guitar, and if you want to use the guitar as a vehicle for understanding music theory, if you want to understand all those wee fancy licks that Rick's showing you, you have to know the notes, or it's just going to be like listening to like an astrophysicist or something. Which can be fun, can be fun to be kind of in the presence of very smart sounding people and feeling a bit bamboozled because it makes you feel superficially smart yourself. But it's much better to really enter the conversation and at least attempt to get a hold of the guitar notes, because this little discipline here that I'm about to show you, it requires zero talent. It requires zero inspiration, right? The only zero that it requires is zero excuses, right? So lots of people make excuses and they stay where they are unnecessarily on the guitar just for this reason, that they don't want to learn the notes. It smells like homework. I know, I'm a guitar player, I'm a musician. Anything that smells like homework, we have an automatic repulsion of, right? But this is a very hopeful thing. If you decide right now, I'm going to dedicate like 5 minutes, every day to learn the notes, your guitar playing will completely go to all kinds of different levels. Now, I'm sure some of you already know all the notes front and back, and you're serious musicians. It's not to insult you. Maybe some of the wee tricks I teach you here, you can use these to help teach your students, because I know a lot of us teach, just to make ends meet. So let's get stuck in. I'm going to show you a few of the most useful ways of thinking about this, and then for Patreon people, I'll keep waffling. For people who are a glutton for punishment and want too much information, I'll keep going, and there'll be a bit longer video on the Patreon page. So let's start with how to, just in a very basic way, learn the notes. Now, it's very important that you don't try and learn them just sequentially. Okay, so let's say we're going to start with this low E string, right? The 6th string. It's very important that we don't just kind of go, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, because when we're doing music, we have to think so quickly that you have to really know that this is a B, you know, without any other thought. It can't be this is A, therefore this is B. So we have to get that out of our system, okay? So here's a wee method to kind of get a hold of the notes in a very absolute way. Now you'll have to do this over and over again, because just like if you're learning something for an exam, you learn it, it's in one ear and out the other, as they say back in Belfast. You have to hear something, you have to process it, and then you have to do it again, and you have to repeat it. You got to do it in short increments, get away from it, and quiz yourself. Okay, so how do we get learning the notes without being sequential and learning them in an absolute way? First of all, if we go E to E, just the natural notes we're talking about here, no sharps, no flats. We have to break it up a wee bit, okay? 8 notes is a bit too long to remember. You know, when you're talking to someone and you know, say you're I don't know, you're trying to make an order for some takeout food, right? And you get the phone number, but the phone number's too long just to know, right? So you ask your friend, I'm going to give you the first 3 numbers and I'll remember the other ones, right? So you break it up a wee bit so it's doable, okay, unless you're some kind of math genius. So what we're going to do is break these notes into 4 notes at a time, okay? And this is how I want you to think. Everything you do on the guitar can be broken into very simple things. Instead of seeing it like a big complicated crazy thing, you can see it as a series of little things, and then you deal with the little things and you get something done, okay? You always get better, as opposed to just being kind of stunned by the mountain in front of you that's too much, right? So, you know, you can learn 3 notes. You know, if you don't know any of them, you can learn 3 of them, right? And you've learned something, okay? So for these first 4 notes, I want you to do this with me. I'm providing you with a little hand-colored PDF underneath the video here. I use my daughter's coloring pencils to draw out the notes for you, right? Maybe I'll get it made into a t-shirt or a mug and you can stare at it while you're having your coffee. So what we're going to do is we're going to do these in one direction, and we're going to do them in a different direction to mess with your brain. We're going to do them backwards, and then we're going to do them zigzag in one direction, and then we're going to do them zigzagged in a different direction. So you can do this with me, you know. So what I want you to do is say it and play it, okay? Even you can sing it too, even better. So if I go E, F, 1st fret, G, 3rd fret, A, 5th fret. Okay, so we go E, F, G, A, backwards. A, G, F, E. Okay? Then we zigzag. Going backwards messes with your brain. It's not in sequence anymore. You have to really think about it. Then we go E, G, F, A, F, G, E. Make sense? Okay, very good. So you do that a few times. I would say do that for 2 minutes. You can do anything for 2 minutes. People just stare out a window for 2 minutes. People pick their nose for 2 minutes, right? You've probably watched adverts on TV for more than 2 minutes, right? So set a wee timer on your phone, do it for 2 minutes, and then get away from it, do something else, and then come back and try it again, right? And then now, next what we're going to do is take this next little sector of the guitar from the 7th fret up to the 12th fret, still just working on only the natural notes, okay? And check your little paper, print off the PDF there. So here we go. We have on the 7th fret we have B, and then 1 fret away we have C, and then on the 10th fret we have D, and the 12th fret we have E. Okay, so let's put it through the ringer. We go B, C, zigzag forwards, B, D, C, E, zigzag backwards, E, C, D, B. Okay? Now, when you think that's easy, and you know, you're getting a wee bit cocky with it, go ahead and try the whole string. Okay, now I mean the whole string up to the E, because after that we want to kind of think of this as like a little mini guitar, you know, and it's just a replica of this, only higher. So I'm not going to talk about anything past the 12th fret. We'll take that as read. So what we do is we can do the same thing. You do that for a few days. It might take you a few minutes, you know, to really kind of get them stuck in there. And then we do the whole string. We go E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E. Zigzag forward. E, G, F, A, G, B, A, C, B, D, C, E. Zigzag backwards. E, C, D, B, C, A, B, G, A, F, G, E. Okay. So that's an example of what you can do on every string, right? You could do that for a whole day on one string. You know, you could do Sundays, you work on your E strings, you know, they're both the same. Unless you could just do it on the weekdays, because there's only 5. And then work on the A string, you know, another day. Work on the D string. Work deliberately. Do it deliberately and you will get results. This doesn't require any talent. It just requires like I can do this. This is what is going to emancipate your guitar playing. This is the key to unlock your guitar. Okay, and there's no other way. So you can do that. Split it up into sectors. Do 4 at a time. Something manageable. Forwards, backwards, zigzag forwards, zigzag backwards. And that will mean that when you look at that note, that will be B, G, you know, D. And as a side note, obviously we don't need to, we can't memorize the accidentals, the ones that are in between the natural notes, because they can have 2 different functions, sometimes more. So, you know, this can be a D sharp on the 11th fret, but can also be an E flat, for instance, right? So we can't really memorize it. We have to see it in terms of the natural notes and of the musical context, right? So if we're in the key of E major, this will definitely be a D sharp, right? If we're in the key of A flat, this will definitely be an E flat, right? So now let's get into another little way that we can attack this. Whenever you're learning something, you have to try and attack it from different directions at the same time, right? So if you're trying to learn about the Roman Empire, say, right, you don't want to just, you know, watch a movie or something. It's like, oh yeah, I watched Gladiator and I know all about the Roman Empire. That might help, watching Gladiator, you know, but you want to read a book, right, about it. You might want to study a serious text, you know, and then you might want to watch a few documentaries about it, right? You may even want to go and visit Rome itself, right? You may want to look at Roman art, Roman architecture. You may want to pursue look at Roman literature at the time, right? So when you approach things at different angles, you're going to see a subject in a more 3-dimensional way, and it's going to stick better, right? And it's also very important to turn these things into wee games, into play, right? So even when you're doing this wee thing, right, and you're trying to say the right notes, play the right notes, make it into a wee game. try and reward yourself. You know, say if I can do this like 4 times in a row or whatever, maybe try not to reward yourself with food. That's not necessarily healthy, or any other substances. But, you know, give yourself a wee reward, or just make it into a game imaginatively. When we play at things, we learn much better. Playing is far more serious than anything else, you know. If you see a kid playing pretend, you know, there's nothing more serious. They're much more serious when they're playing than they are when they're in, you know, school, working on their math sums, you know. Or if you see my daughter playing like Dungeons and Dragons, you know, I mean, it's so serious. She's as serious as I am talking to you here. So when you play at things, your brain kicks in. I don't know how much more, but it's exponentially more involved. So always turn everything into a wee game. If you're teaching students, make sure you turn it into a wee game. If I'm doing it with wee students, I make them play a game and they get a wee bit of candy, maybe, you know, if they get it, you know, and they win the game. So you want to reinforce that positive reinforcement with it. So we want to kind of look at this also in different facets as well. We can try and say if we just learn that one E string, for instance, you can try and use like a chord progression maybe to reinforce, as opposed to using just your regular chords, right? So you could use a little chord progression because you know the root note, because you've learned the notes. You can plug in little chords already, and you can use them in a lead guitar kind of context, or you can just play the chords, right? So if I let me try and think of a song. I'll play this like a wee Gillian Welch song, but in a key that suits my voice better. Have you ever heard the song Time the Revelator? Like, darling, remember when you come to me, I'm the pretender, I'm not what I'm supposed to be, but who could know if I'm a traitor? Time's the revelator. Okay, so a song like that. Now, I could think about that in a different way. I could think like, darling, when you come to me. So say I've memorized the E strings, right? Because they're both E strings. Then I could say like, okay, I'm going to plug in some wee chord shapes that fit those notes. So maybe the kind of thing that would help you if you were a lead guitar player in a band or something, just to get out of the way of the usual open chords. So those first 3 chords are like, in my version, just to fit my voice, are E minor, C, and then A major, right? So immediately you're playing a wee game with the notes. We know that there, you know, if we just put all 3 fingers down here, we'll have a little minor chord, right? But the highest note is the root note. It's an inversion, you know, the thirds and the bass. And then we know that, you know, we've all seen this wee shape before, right? Where you bar two strings and then we just majorize the third. We have a little major triad, right? So these are very useful wee shapes, especially with lead guitar. So we could go through that chord progression and we could just find the appropriate little triads for it, and you know, play along with a song that you know, and try and plug in these wee Legos, you know. So you go, darling, remember when you come pretender. I'm not what I'm supposed to be. Right? And then you could take that, you know, you get your Strat out or whatever, and you could try and do some kind of lead playing with that as part of the game. You know, if you're not used to learning the notes like this, playing lead guitar, playing useful parts on a guitar has really got very little to do with scales. Everyone's like learning scales all the time. It's not. Music is about harmony. Music is about harmonies changing and being able to react to the harmony, you know. So, for instance, as a lead guitar player, you could use those same little shapes, right? And you could just pick a string, right? And you could think like, okay, I'm gonna play just one note at a time. I'm gonna look at the shape, right? But I'm gonna just focus on one string. So I'm kind of gonna use my mind's eye of what that note is. So we could use the second string, for instance, and use our knowledge of the first string notes to find good second string notes because of the wee chord shape. So you could be like, you could slide into that note, and that's going to be a good note for the E minor chord because it's a harmony note. And then go to the C. So in my mind's eye, I'm visualizing that wee chord that's based on the C note, but I'm focusing on the second string part of it. I don't have to actually play the chord. I can just see it in my mind's eye. Take a moment and just see if you can do that. And then we'll go to the A chord. Maybe decorate it a little bit. Right? So you're more likely to be able to engage in a song as a lead guitarist almost instantly, just by knowing the notes on one string, right? So try and get this harmony kind of in your head. You could play something that even uses different parts of the triad. So you see how you can kind of hear the chords underneath, because you're playing with the chords. You're just doing them in a different higher partials, you know, higher part of the guitar. So that's very important. That's a very fundamental thing. Now imagine if you know all of the notes on all of the strings, right? It means that you could go through that chord progression in any position, right? I could be like E minor, C, A, C, right? I could be here, E minor, C, right? A7, right? You could be up here, E minor, and then A, C, right? You could be up here. And you could interchange them, you can slide around, and you kind of just see things, you know, the guitar will unlock for you. And you use your scale knowledge then, whether it's laterally or it's up and down the guitar. It's more of just like passing tones or real notes that are going to be deliberate dissonances, you know, like appoggiatura, as you would say in classical music. So that's just an example how you can kind of get stuck into the guitar a wee bit and unlock it. Now obviously if you're a classical guitarist, I mean I've talked to some young classical guitarists and I'm like, well, have you know, explored a different fingering for this and stuff? And a lot of times what holds them back from that creative aspect of finding the best possible fingering is they just don't know the notes, you know, so they're kind of climbing around. They don't know that this is an F. So if you're trying to find something that's better than, you know, and you don't know that this is F, you know, or you don't know that this is F, you hamper yourself and you keep yourself limited. So when you're a classical guitarist and you're trying to unlock and you're trying to find the best possible fingerings, you know, I call them the Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross fingerings, the ones you're really excited about, and they're like a pleasure to play, they're easy, and they sound awesome. You have to kind of just look at the notes on the page, and then all of these options are kind of showing themselves to you. So it's a very fundamental thing in terms of developing really good fingerings for classical guitar, and that's one of the most fundamental things, you know. So it's just very important. Also, when you're say in music school and you're imagining music theory things, I would often use my guitar when I was in theory class, and you had to kind of use the guitar as like an abacus almost in your head. So if the teacher says like B flat major or something, I mean, in my head I can see that B flat on the 3rd string, 3rd fret, and then I kind of know all the notes of B flat major because I can see my guitar in my head. I can see the D on the 2nd string, 3rd fret. I can see the F on the 1st string, 1st fret, right? Because I know this little shape, right? Make sense? And then you also know the good voice leading, because you know the closest way to E flat then is right here, where the D just goes up to an E flat, the B flat stays, the F goes up to G, right? And you can do the best voice leading possible also because of these wee shapes that you know, okay? So I can't tell you how important this is for every style of guitar playing. You have to just throw yourself into it like it's the cure for cancer, you know. So now let's talk about another wee angle to look at this, and then I'll shut up and I'll keep waffling for the Patreon, the gluttons for punishment people. Now if you're going to start with any of the strings, this is another way of looking at it. I would try and focus on learning the E string, both E strings, but you know, the low E string. A lot of times we start chords and scales on these, and then I would learn the A string, the 5th string, okay? Now this is another way of learning the guitar, and this is probably how I learned the notes, just kind of organically by playing a lot. Is learning, if we learn both of these strings, and if you use that little method that I talked about at first, you can use those 2 strings to learn all of the other strings, okay? Just by the use of octaves. Now if you look at that wee drawing I made, you'll notice that kind of color coded it, right? So you look at an A on the 6th string, and then you'll notice that if we skip a string and go to the D string, an A is 2 frets up from that, or an octave, right? Now some of you might use octaves if you're in one of those kind of emo bands and you're like, you're doing these big thick lines, or if you're wanting to be Wes Montgomery, you know, and you're like, you might use octaves a lot anyway. But if this is new to you, this is a very powerful device for learning the notes, right? So we have A here, and we also have A here. So what you can do with that is you can pretend you're like a bass player, right? Say you've learned the E string, right? And we do that same Gillian Welsh song in the wrong key, and we go, darling, remember C, A major, when you come to me. Then because of your octave knowledge, try and visualize those same notes on the D string 2 frets higher and play the bass line for those. So you see this kind of connection between these 2 strings all the time, like they're one string, and you go, darling, remember when you come to me, right? And you make a connection, turn it into a game, turn it into something musical, turn it into a song, and you'll remember it better. Okay, so if we have that string learned, and then we also have this E string learned, then we've got half the strings. You know, that's half of the whole strings, right? So then let's have a look at the A string, and let's pretend that we've got it memorized, right? And how we can kind of jump off that into the other strings. Usually the third and the second strings are the most mysterious strings for guitar players, but we have to know them, right? So say I know that this is an E on the 7th fret, right? It's exactly the same wee rule for the 3rd string. The octave is going to be 2 frets up, skip a string to the G string. That's going to be an E as well. Make sense? He asked rhetorically. Okay, so same thing, right? Make it into like a wee game, a wee song. Maybe find a triad that is based, the root note is on the 3rd string. So for instance, we could use this little triad, E minor, minor shape, add the pinky for a major shape, right? And say that you know the A string, and try and go through a similar song, you know, try and go like darling, remember, right? When you come to me, I'm the pretender, I'm not what I'm supposed to be, right? Obviously you can do the same thing for the previously talked about D string. Darling, remember when you come to me. Just put in a little triad and it'll fit in like a Lego. Now the only other string that we have to worry about then is the 2nd string, or the B string. And it's pretty easy to remember too, because we can still slave off the A string, the 5th string, but instead of going 2 frets in front of it, we think about it being 2 frets back, just like a C chord, you know, basic C chord. We have our 2 C's, or the root notes in a C chord. Okay. Okay, so if we know this is an E, then we know that this is an E. Maybe you want to try doing a little lead thing in octaves. That might help you too. Put on a wee backing track. YouTube's full of little backing tracks and chord progressions, or just put on one of your favorite songs that you know the chords to, and try and do a wee solo thing, you know, and get your fingers going. So octaves are really something that we can use to visualize the chords. Okay, so I'll stop waffling now. If you're a Patreon person, I'm going to talk about sharks and bear cubs and some other stuff. Okay.